Welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life podcast. I'm Mary Crafts, and now that I've reached this 250 podcast number, there is this sense like, oh, maybe I will keep doing this. Maybe this isn't going to be my last one. I love coming to with you every single week. I love what we have to offer each other. I love the feedback that you bring to me. I love just thinking through things. Sometimes I don't even know what it is I'm going to talk about. I mean, I have a general idea, but until I start talking to you, and then I feel like I just get this clarity. So I hope that to some degree that's how it is for you. Today I have kind of a wonderful thing that I want to talk about, and it's my book launch. I have been talking about publishing a book now for 3 years since I came home from Kilimanjaro. And it's happening like this week. It's hard for me to believe. And I wanted to talk about this today, but I didn't want to necessarily just talk about my book. This is because I've never been about talking just about me and about self-aggrandizement and about, hey, look here if you want to know how to live. It's not like that. We do this together, and you know that. So I thought today's topic would be of value to everyone if I turned it into what I talk about, the value of having summits in your life. Different highs, different lows, different ups, different downs. We all know about that's how life is. It's not just one continual line. But that it's different than just having those daily kind of ups and downs. It's where you plan your summits. You know what you want to achieve. You set a goal, you lay out the strategy, how to get there, and then step by step, you find your way. And there's only a moment at the top of the summit, and having done a summit like this, several summits like this, there's only a moment at the top where you go, I did this. And there's this sense of elation. But then you come down from the summit. On Kilimanjaro, after 7 days, 5 days of going, 5.5 days, I think it took us to reach the summit. After 5.5 days up, you only spend 15 minutes up there. And then because of the altitude and how high we are, you have to descend. And as I'm descending, I'm just overwhelmed with this goal and that I did this. But by the time I got to the bottom, I was already thinking, what's next? I still love and appreciate all the lessons from Kili. But each and every day, I'm putting things in front of me that allow me to have a continuous series of summits in my life. Something that I'm working for, something that I'm building for in my life. And so that what you have to realize that it's not just the top of the mountains where the joy is. The joy is in the climb. The joy is in the step by step. Now, there were plenty of times when I was on Kili that I didn't think, oh yeah, this is the joy. None of us think that when we're in the middle of the struggle. But that is what the piece we have to come to realize is that the struggle is the gift. And that we appreciate all those things that come to us from the journey up. It is the gift of the journey. The thrill of the summit is very fleeting, but the lessons you learn on your way, on the path last forever. Now, I want to say that again because I think it's so important and so profound. The thrill of the summit is fleeting, but the lessons from the journey last forever. That if I could teach you one thing today, that would be it, right there. And then you descend to climb again and again. Each time as you decide what summit you're going to mount this time, you do so a little wiser, a little more skillful, a little more ready, a little more filled with more gifts. And so each summit can become a little easier. Not that, like, say, for example, I still have some summits in my brain that I want to climb. Just because I have all these lessons doesn't mean that they're going to be easier but it does give you confidence to know that you can do it. And you've heard this phrase a million times. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time, okay? It's the process that becomes so critical as we ascend up and that we map out our lives. If you think that you are like a bobblehead doll and your life is just like, waiting for the next 2x4 to hit you in the head, and that life is just bringing you a series of accidents, it's time to step out of that. And time to step into mapping out, crafting the life that you want. No more bobblehead. Just looking forward. What am I going to do next? What am I going to bring to my life that's going to make it a more meaningful life? If you haven't been crafting your life, now is the time. It's never too late to start. So with my book, that's what I hope this is for me. Another summit. I look at different summits that I've had in my life, building a business from scratch with $150 in my pocket and building it to the largest catering company in the state, and dozens of best of state awards, International Caterer of the Year. And I didn't ever start out to be the largest. I did set out with a goal in mind to be the best. And it mattered what I did each and every day if I wanted to keep and maintain that goal. And that's how it is with anything that you put out in your life. I raised my children, and I had a goal of getting them all married. And then after that, I'm there to be a help, but I was no longer the major influence in their life. And then I jumped back to, now I have these beautiful grandchildren, and I want to be part of their lives, and I want to be somebody that they look up to, and that's a whole different journey. And then once I retired, there was no sitting back on my haunches and saying, look what I did. From that point, I went on to plan and map out my journey to the summit of Kilimanjaro. And then I started doing my podcast and mapped that out, and then going to Ukraine to serve and map that out. And now in the middle of helping the forgotten women of Afghanistan and that summit and what that looks like. I'm constantly looking ahead of what my next summit is going to be. But for this week, my summit is announcing my book, that it's actually being published. It will be available this Friday, October 28th, on Amazon and Kindle. The audiobook will come sometime next year because I'm pretty committed to reading my own book and not having somebody else do it. I think I have the skill set to read my own book, and no one is going to feel the passion that I felt from living these experiences. So it's a great example of crafting our experience, that there was no gun to my head to go up Kilimanjaro. No one said, okay, this is your next step. I chose it. I remember when my little granddaughter, Brina, said to me, she was 10 at the time, Grandma, if you're so afraid, why are you going? She says, you don't have to go. You can stay home. And I said, I could, but I'm going to show myself that I can do hard things. And when you grow up, you will know that you can do hard things, because you have the same blood running through your vein that I have. We can do hard things, and so can you. There were a lot of struggles that were in my way of finishing this book. So many struggles in the way. For example, as I became more and more part of the arthritis syndrome, and my hands became more and more difficult to type on the typewriter. I didn't know if I was ever going to finish this book, but I kept looking. And my son-in-law introduced me to a method where I could just talk and I could use audio and it would transcribe it into a written format. Now, it's not perfect. You kind of have to go back, edit, reread. No, I didn't want a comma there. That's a period. And no, I didn't say this word. I said that word. But for the most part, that process worked for me. I was able to work through that struggle and find a method that did work for me. And then the pandemic came along. And at first, everyone's just like, oh no, the pandemic. Oh, life is coming to an end. But for me, without having to attend event after event, I was able to buckle down and accomplish things in my life that I had just been like dreaming someday I'd finish. And the book is one of them. So there were so many great gifts in the struggle of the pandemic. And for me, that was one of them, that I was able to finish this book. And then another thing that I struggled with was my publisher. So let me tell you about that struggle. Early on, before I had ever finished the book, a friend recommended a publisher to me. Someone that they said loves to publish women's books. And I thought, oh, I love this. And so I reached out to them. We set up a conference call and I spoke with them. And at first, I really thought this was my place and I was going to be published by this publisher. And when my draft was finally done, the manuscript was ready, I sent it off. Several weeks go by and I didn't hear from them. And I was like a little panicky. And finally, I got the rejection letter. And it said, such a great book, Mary, but we don't feel we're the best publisher for you at this time. You're an unpublished author, and we don't know how many books you can sell. And reach out to us another time around, and we'll take a look again. I remember when I read that letter, my heart literally just stopped beating. And I thought, well, this book wasn't for publishing. This is just for me as an exercise in recounting my lessons. Maybe it's for my children. Maybe it's for my grandchildren. I kind of put it on the shelf. I just let go of it. I don't know if I saw it as a defeat, but I certainly didn't see it as a summit. About a year later, I go to breakfast with my dear friend, Jeff O'Driscoll. And he said, so what happened to the book? He's a very established publisher of books. And I thought, well, how do I tell him I just shelved it? I decided not to publish it. So finally I spit it out. And he literally reached over and hit me on the arm and said, who do you think you are? You think that you are going to get published on your first manuscript going to a publisher? He said, most first-time authors get rejected 5, 6, sometimes a dozen times, but they keep going. You didn't reach Kilimanjaro just by sprinting up there. And he said, I can give you lots of publishers to submit to, but I don't think that's what you should do. I think you should publish it right now, right away, and publish on Amazon. Self-publish. I go, oh, I didn't want to self-publish. That means your book's not very good. And he goes, says who? Okay. So that was a misconception on my part. All right. So I spent the summer getting it ready for publishing on Amazon, making decisions about the cover and the font and the price. And I mean, all sorts of things I didn't realize I would need to have to make on my own. And I did. And now it's ready. But that was each one of those little things are summits that we mount. And when we get to the top and it's ready for me to push publish on Amazon, I was like, damn, girl, you made it again. That's awesome. And that's the value of having mentors in your life, those who have gone before, because they can offer you such wonderful suggestions and they can offer you feedback on the path you're going. And maybe it's not in alignment with who you really are. Mentors who have gone that way before. If you don't have mentors in your life, champions, then it's time to get some. It's never too late to find mentors in your life. And what I learned from this and this process of the summit of writing a book was resilience. Ah, yes. My old friend resilience that I thought I learned up on the mountain, I learned again resilience. It's one of the most valuable lessons I have learned and continue to learn in this life. I had to overcome a lot of fears. I had to overcome the fears of, what if no one buys the book? What if I can't even sell 100 books? What if I price it too low? What if I price it too high? Just all sorts of fears. What if I publish it and people buy it, but no one likes it? Oh my gosh, can I go back to being rejected like that? All right, Mary. These are fears. And those are the very principles that you teach in this book, how to overcome fears. It's time for you to step up once again. Put your fears in their place and click publish. I did. And now I have clarity on my next summit. As most of you know who watch this or listen to this podcast, I have a new direction of my life. And it's less now about overcoming fears because I kind of reached that summit and I just have to bring those lessons up again and again. And my new summit, my new mission in life is to create oneness on this planet. It's like the biggest mission of my life, can I just say? But it'll see me probably to the end of my days here and beyond. But I'm so committed to it. And the same lessons that I learned in building a business, in climbing Kilimanjaro, in writing this book, in each one of those summits are the same lessons that are going to see me through this next summit, this next climb, this biggest climb of my life. Tell everyone about your goals. Tell everyone about the summits that are in front of you. Oftentimes we don't tell people about these things because, we think in our head, what if I don't make it? I don't want everyone to just be laughing at me or think I don't know what I'm doing. Well, you have 1,000 times more likelihood of reaching the summit, of achieving your goals, the more people you tell. Because then you do have people saying, hey, how's that book coming? I'm still working on it. It's coming. Well, what can I do to support you? In my weight loss journey, I told everyone, and people would say, you want to go for a walk on Saturday? And I would just be elated that more people and more people were part of my lift, part of my lifting up my goals and my summit, part of getting me there. And that's one of the things you're going to read about in my book are how all those people on that final day of my summit came back to me and they lifted me on the way to the summit when I could hardly breathe. All those people are available to you now in whatever journey you're on. So reach out, tell as many people as you can about your journey and where you're going and your vision and what it's about, and allow them to lift you. Don't be afraid that you're not going to make it and you'll be embarrassed, because surely you won't make it if that's what your fear is. Decide today, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to tell everyone that will listen. So you may be wondering, actually, what's in my book? And what's the title? Okay, so this is the title, Unbounded. And I've had people come back to me and say, well, unbounded, is that a word? Or, should you just say unbound? Or no. I had to look and research that, and I really knew it was right for me. The word is unbounded, because I know what it's been like to be bound up by fear, to make every decision in my life based on fear, rather than being my best self. And so I wanted my title to be Unbounded, from sorrow to summit. And it does not matter what your sorrow is. It does not matter what your summit is. The lessons in this book, it's a how-to book on how to reach your summit. So I'm just going to kind of read you what some of these chapters are and give you a sneak preview. I've been pretty guarded about what's in the book, other than it's a how to overcome fears. So This is what's included in the book. First, there's the introduction, the credits and my acknowledgments, those kinds of things. There's a little blurb about me and kind of what I've done in my life. There's a foreword written by Jeanette Bennett. And then these are the chapters. Chapter 1, How in the Hell Did I Get Here? And that's the night before I start on the summit. I start with the night before the summit. I go through the process of how to, and then the last chapter is the night I actually summit, and then the lessons I've learned after. Chapter 2 is the sorrow. It's about where I began my journey and where you might be beginning yours. You have to understand your past to map your future. Chapter 3, the moment you know, the stranglehold of fear. Yeah. My resolution was to actually understand my fears, to understand what had been holding me bound, why every decision in my life, conscious or unconscious, was being made by fear, most of the time unconscious, and how to raise that level of consciousness. Chapter 4, this is one of my favorites. Pack the moving van, we're moving and leaving Victimville. How to stop being a victim and how to step into accountability for your own life. Chapter 5, how to have conviction and commitment. Because even though you might have now recognized your fear and you want to take accountability, you have to have commitment and conviction to actually leave and stay gone and not jump on the train back to Victimville. Number 6 is about building resilience. I love this chapter about how you can be punched in the face time and time again and bounce back up like those old sand dolls that we used to punch and they'd bounce right back up. How to build resilience. Chapter 7, I'm not perfect, but I am damn good. Okay. This is about the pursuit, and I say this so many times when I speak and in my book and on my podcast, the pursuit of perfection will kill you. But the pursuit of excellence will inspire you every day of your life to wake up every day thinking about what is your best you can bring this day. And that's when you realize, I'm not perfect, but I'm pretty good at what I do. Chapter 8 is about defining your own hashtag and finding what it is that you want to put after your name, that you want to be about, that you want to put out to the world, what you're going to proclaim that your summit looks like early on before you've ever reached it. Chapter 9 is every challenge is a gift. This is that gift of the struggle and how to really tune in to how you can just absolutely claim the struggle as your gift. Chapter 10, finding that passageway then from fear to love. How to let go of living a fear-based life and actually claim a love-based life and what that passageway looks like. Number 11, personal training for greatness. This is my one chapter that I've included about being fit and healthy. This is not, I'm going to write another book that's about the process and the how-to. This book is all the lessons you need to claim in order to be on that fitness journey. But I give you a lot of sneak previews and some keys that helped me. Chapter 12, the summit. What the summit is and what it looks like and how it feels. When I reached that summit, I put my stake in the ground and I was able to say and proclaim, I am enough. I'm no longer going to be afraid of failure, rejection, being laughed at. I am enough. I always have been, I am today, and I always will be. Imagine the triumph of that, and that can be yours at each summit in your life. When I published this book and I pushed that publish button, I felt it once again. I'm enough. I let go of so many fears in publishing this book. That's what's contained in that chapter. In chapter 13, I couldn't write this book without a chapter on gratitude and the gift of gratitude and what that means in your life, how it can change your life. Just like so many principles, when you own it as your own and you start and end each day with gratitude, it's life-changing. Chapter 14 is what I call divine discontent. I've talked about it on this program before, but it's really when you realize that, yes, I accomplished that, but you don't get to sit back on your heels and just say, yeah, I did that. But you get to decide what are your new journeys. And I give you all my lessons that I've learned since Kilimanjaro, or at least some of them. And the chapter 15 is about you. It's time to live fearlessly. It's my challenge to you of how to live fearlessly and to be your very best self, to be that person that you've always been and have been clouding it with all the stuff of this life. Now, don't think you're alone in this or I'm alone in this. Every single person on the planet has this journey. We're not unique, but some never step into that journey, and they never learn how to live without fear. At the end of each chapter, I include QR codes so that you can click on them and listen to podcasts I've given about those very topics in the book. At the end of the book, there's what I call a reader's guide, and that is like for people who want to read this for a book club, questions you might ask. It could also be used as a worksheet for yourself as you work through this book. But I don't want you to read that till the end. When I had it suggested to me that I put a worksheet for you to do at the end of each chapter. And I decided that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted you to pick up this book and I wanted you to read it from start to finish without doing the QR codes, without looking what you could do for a worksheet for yourself. Read, just keep reading, keep reading. I had a friend of mine that I let read this book, and what she came back to me was, at the end of each chapter, I just had all these questions. I wanted to stop and call you and say, well, what about this? But I just was impressed to just keep reading. And all those questions were answered in the next chapter, and then the next chapter. And then at the very end, I was able to listen to podcasts, and then I was able to do my own worksheet. That is a gift in and of itself. Just keep reading and keep listening. Yeah. This is the book. And I hope that on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, October 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, that you go to Amazon and look up Mary Crafts, Unbounded. I don't think you have to put the title in From Sorrow to Summit. I think just Unbounded. Purchase a copy. Or if you'd like to attend one of my launch events, I will have them for sale at a very discounted rate. And so you can reach out to me on social media, on this podcast, of how you could actually attend an event in person. And I would love to have you. This is my gift. This is my gift to the world. To myself. I don't think it's my last gift. In fact, I know it isn't. But it is my gift. My voice is only heard by a few. By those who listen, and by those who attend maybe a keynote speak that I do or something. But with the book, I can give this gift to so many more. And then they can give it to others. I've thought about who this book would be appropriate to give at Christmas time, and it's to almost everyone. For example, I wrote this with in mind that my grandchildren, probably I wouldn't do anything younger than junior high because they just wouldn't understand the concepts. But my grandchildren who are in junior high and high school, you betcha there's going to be a copy in their stockings for sure. And I remember speaking one time to a group, and it was a group of men. Most of the time I speak to women, and sometimes there's mixed audiences, but this time it was all men. And as I started off, I started talking about all the fears that had held me bound. And all the men, I could see this look starting to come over their face like, I've never felt those fears. I don't really know if I relate to this. And finally, one guy raised his hand and he said, "Oh, I get it. I think my wife has those fears." And I laughed right out loud and I said, "Your wife, huh?" I said, "You don't have fear?" He goes, "Well, no, not like the fear you talk about. You talk about physical fear. I've never been afraid really to do anything physically. You talk about, needing, your fitness journey. I've always been an athlete. I've always had, been really fit. I don't know anything about those fears." And I said, those were my fears, but they're not necessarily yours. And then I paused and looked right at him and I said, "Have you ever been afraid you've been passed up for a promotion? Have you ever thought that maybe you were caught up in the imposter syndrome and that someday somebody was going to find out?" For years, I had the dream that the college was going to come and take my diploma because they would have discovered somehow that I hadn't really graduated and done all the coursework. Were you ever afraid that you weren't going to be able to provide for your family or make your mortgage payment? Were you ever afraid you weren't going to be the father you wanted to be? And suddenly I began to see across this sea of men, the light bulbs come on, and how so many of them had been living their lives in fear. This book is for everyone. I invite you to buy it. I invite you to craft your meaningful life, to unbound yourself from all the fears that are holding you back. You might think you'd be unbounded, but let me tell you, by the time you read this book, you'll find new areas that you can summit. It's your gift from me. Thanks for listening today.
Listen to the full podcast today and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. Crafting a Meaningful Life with Mary Crafts.